There is more trouble brewing for President Biden, both in the polls and within the White House. A report from the Washington Post yesterday revealed that President Biden sees his poll numbers as unacceptably low. And he's apparently grown frustrated and upset that his numbers haven't been turning around. And it looks like they won't be turning around anytime soon. A new poll from Monmouth University shows the president's approval rating down to a staggering 34%. A new record low for that poll. New record low for America. Things are looking so bleak that even Vice President Kamala Harris is polling above Biden. Her approval rating was 1 point higher at 35%. Now, meanwhile, a new report from Axios claims that President Biden's reluctance to acknowledge his own age is causing internal strife within his administration. It reads in part, quote, current and former aides say that Biden is extraordinarily energetic for his age, but his repeated insistence that he feels so young can draw eye rolls. Some current and former aides believe Biden doesn't realize how old he can come across. That's whitewashing it. And now Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley is seizing on those concerns in a new campaign ad calling for a new generation of leaders. Watch.
I'll just say it. Biden's too old, and Congress is the most exclusive nursing home in America. Washington keeps failing because politicians from yesterday can't lead us into tomorrow.
All right, Joy, she makes a great point. You know, the politicians from yesterday can't lead us into tomorrow. That's a great concept. Do you feel her Biden is too old will work? Or do you feel it should have maybe focused on his competence, his acuity, you know, something besides the number? It's about how he performs, not necessarily a number to many people.
Yeah, I think blaming the things we see, like when he stumbles on words, gets lost on stage, trips and falls more than a guy with no legs does. I think when we blame that on age, we're actually being quite graceful and kind. Because, you know, you gracefully age, you gracefully get older, and eventually, you know, life runs out for you. You know, what's the inverse here? That he does all these things because of a medical condition. He does all these things because he's not all the way with it. So to blame it on age is probably something they should run with and say, hey, yeah, he's got this long track record and decades of experience. But when you want to attack Biden, Nikki Haley has to use age because that's also the line she's drawn with President Trump when she wants America First supporters and MAGA supporters to also support her. So she has to take that age line. She's done it since the very beginning, even before she and Trump were attacking each other. But if you want to, you want to beat Biden, I mean, his record is good enough. I mean, Ukraine, Afghanistan, Israel, anti-Semitism on the rise. The border is completely open. I have a list, but I don't need it. Interest rates are higher than they've been in my adult life. All the nuanced policy wins he wants to tout doesn't change reality for Americans in most of the towns in this country. So they can go out and brag on this and brag on that. Americans feel like the country's in a worse place. Whether that's even factually true or not, that's how they feel. I live in regular America. I don't live in New York City. I live in small town Georgia. I socialize in Texas. People feel that way. It's not changing. It's not just his age, it's his policies too.
Yeah, I live in New York City and I'm a regular American.
I don't mean that in any, I don't mean that
My life is regular too.
I don't mean that, I didn't mean that in a negative way.
And Marie, here's my question. Based on Joey's comment was so profound. It doesn't matter necessarily what stats you can throw. It matters how people feel. And the majority of people feel disheartened and that there's a lot of concerning issues. And the fact that Biden refuses to acknowledge, or as Axios says, calls him extraordinarily energetic, we know that's a lie. And that not only does he refuse to acknowledge the age, the competence, but also all of those things that Joey said, the way Americans feel. Do you think that's a winning sentiment? Will it change? Americans see that too.
Well, the job of campaigns is to get out there and make the case, right? And there are a lot of Democrats encouraging the Biden campaign to maybe get a little more active, to get out there a little bit more, because a lot of us feel like there is a lot of good economic news. Manufacturing jobs in my home state of Ohio, booming right now because of policies that the Biden administration put into place. So they have to get out there. They have to make the case. And God bless Nikki Haley. She's running a heck of a campaign. She's not running against Joe Biden right now. She is running against Donald Trump. And while she tiptoes around that age competency line with Donald Trump, she hasn't come out and said it quite as starkly. You know, she's not going to be the Republican nominee if I had to put my life savings on it today. Donald Trump is. Donald Trump is also not young. Donald Trump is also facing dozens of criminal indictment charges right now. So I say this every time. Elections are choices. Joe Biden is not a spring chicken. Do I wish he were 20 years younger? Sure. Do I think he has a record that if he gets out there and makes the case to Americans, they will pick him over a return to Donald Trump and all of the misogyny and racism that he's already spewing on the campaign trail? As a Democrat, I will take that bet any day of the week.
Tammy, it's interesting. So Marie brings up the jobs, but a lot of Americans have to have 2 jobs or 3. It doesn't matter what your job is paying because prices are so high. So in every corner that you hear a good statistic, there's a lot of pain and frustration Americans continue to feel that blanket that.
Well, as the incumbent, he shouldn't be behind the 8 ball to have to make the case. His results are our daily lives. What we see, what we feel when we wake up in the morning, when we think about what's for breakfast versus how much gas is in the car. If it's safe to let my child walk to school. If it's safe for me to go into public transportation and not see a Hamas guy here in New York. I mean, there are things that you shouldn't have. Your daily life is the nature of the results of a presidency. And people felt that with Donald Trump, absolutely, on a day-to-day basis, and they're feeling it with Joe Biden. I would argue also, I'm very against, to your point, Emily, the notion of pointing to age. So what, a younger Democrat would be so much better than Joe Biden right now? It's the same policies, maybe wrapped a little bit differently, but that's a mistake. Also, age, of course, is not the problem. That does bring experience, and it's important, like knowing who Sandra Day O'Connor is and why she was important. But then, of course, at the same time, it's about youth, and the youth these days don't seem to have a grasp on what's important in this country.
You know, I would put it this way. Would a younger Joe Biden have the same policies? And if the answer is yes, I mean, him telling us to watch us and he's falling down and he's doing these other things, that's like an unfortunate additive to the process. But I think he remains the same person. When you look at his track record on crime, when you look at his track record on foreign policy, I don't think you arrive at any different other place. And when I said to Mark Penn last hour, can you take the keys to the bus and drive for him? It wasn't because he's old, it's because it's broken. The system is broken for everyday people. By the way, I love Georgia and Texas, too. So, I mean, no matter where he is or what he's doing, his team, they may be saying to them, other donors may be telling his team, we need more energy. But he said to watch him, and he's not showing us energy. So can he show us better policy? What does he have to bring? And why is he going to Milwaukee, Wisconsin tomorrow to talk about busted Bidenomics?
It's such a great question, and so many more questions to come.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Compagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.